In our modern world, when outside dangers threaten what we value, we often install alarms. Alarms on our homes, alarms on our cars, fire alarms, smoke alarms, even digital alarms triggered by someone trying to hack our online accounts. But hundreds of thousands of years ago, our ancestors had no such technology. Instead, nature equipped them with alarms wired into their brains. Circuits so finely tuned to threats that they were triggered in an instant, long before reason could weigh in. And although we may not be aware of it, those alarms are still with us today. We call them the ancient survival buttons. So what are these alarms wired into the brain? Scientists sometimes call them survival circuits. Evolution created these buttons because hesitation could be fatal. A rustle in the grass might just be the wind, but if it was a lion, those who paused too long to think didn't survive. And it wasn't only predators. Rival tribes competing for food, water, or status could be just as deadly. The survivors were the ones whose brain fired first and thought later. Those circuits are still firing in us today, tuned to 5 powerful evolutionary triggers. The first is the tribal identity alarm. For millions of years, survival meant knowing who was us and who was them. In small bands, us usually meant family. But strangers from other groups were different. They were not kin and often competitors for food, land, or mates. That made them a potential danger. The human brain became so tuned to this split that even today, scientists can randomly assign people to red or blue t-shirts, and instantly favoritism within each group appears. The same circuits that once bound clans together now fuel loyalty to sports teams, political parties, and even to brands.
Yay!
The second evolutionary trigger is the resource threat alarm. On the savannah, losing food or water often meant death. Today, even hearing the phrase, "they're taking your jobs," presses the same ancient evolutionary circuit. In fact, research shows that simply imagining scarcity makes people shift towards harsher, more defensive attitudes. And in American football, every yard gained or lost is read by the brain as a struggle for the control of territory, tapping into the same wiring that we once needed to defend our watering holes from outsiders. Third is the purity or contamination alarm. Our emotional feelings of disgust evolved to protect us from spoiled food and disease. But today, that same wiring can be hacked. The brain's alarm centers fire almost instantly. The amygdala, which detects threats, and the insula, which generates that gut feeling of disgust. Together, they flood us with revulsion long before the rational brain can weigh in. That's why politicians and propagandists often use it for contaminated language, calling outsiders vermin, rats, or disease carriers. Once the disgust alarm is pulled, people don't calmly check the facts. Their bodies have already reacted, and their cerebral cortexes rush to catch up, often by justifying their fears. The fourth evolutionary trigger is the parental alarm. When humans lived in small scattered groups, every child's survival was critical to the tribe's future. That's why a baby's cry activates the brain in less than a second, even if the child isn't yours. The response is so general that it even fires for baby animals. A whimpering puppy or a kitten can trigger the same protective surge, heart racing, focus sharpened, body ready to defend. And because this alarm is so powerful, it's also easy to hack. Politicians and advertisers know that nothing mobilizes people faster than a threat to children. Even distant or exaggerated dangers, when framed as protecting our kids, can trigger this ancient circuit, making us react first and question the facts later. The final evolutionary trigger is the status alarm. Among primates, the biological group that includes monkeys, apes, and humans, status determined access to food, protection, and mates. Losing status wasn't just a setback, it could cost your survival. Neuroscience shows that when our status is threatened, the brain lights up circuits identical to physical pain. That's why an attack on your honor can feel as real as a shove. Because this alarm is etched so strongly into our biology, it's one of the most hackable. Political leaders, demagogues, and media actors stoke feelings of disrespect. And that sense of a wounded status quickly turns into anger, loyalty, and action. Appeals to lost greatness, public shaming, and staged insults are all ways the status alarm gets pulled. And once it's triggered, people are far more likely to back extreme measures to restore their rank or reputation. So, what happens to your body when one of these alarms is triggered? The amygdala fires instantly. Stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol flood your bloodstream. The body prepares for fight or flight, as if you were in great danger, whether the threat is real or not. In those moments, energy shifts away from the cerebral cortex, the part of your brain that reasons slowly, and into faster survival circuits instead. You feel certain, with an urgency to act, but you're less likely to pause, reflect, or judge whether the threat is truly there. In this state, people become more suggestible to a leader, to the group, to whatever signal feels most urgent in the moment. Once the alarm is pulled, we are primed to follow, not to question. That's exactly why these ancient alarm systems are easily hacked. And if one alarm makes us vulnerable, imagine what happens when several are triggered at once. Psychologists call this stacking. Each alarm reinforces the others, creating a surge of emotion that can almost be impossible to resist. You see it in sports. A football game stacks alarms together. The first one is tribal identity, our team versus theirs. The second is scarcity. This relates to every yard of territory gained or lost. And the third one is status, rising or falling in the rankings. That's why wins flood fans with dopamine and other reward chemicals, while losses sting at the very same brain circuits that register physical pain. The same playbook shows up in politics, with far higher stakes. Leaders frame outsiders as contamination, warn that jobs are being stolen, insist that people's children are in danger, and stoke anger over lost status, all while wrapping it up in an us versus them tribal language. When your evolutionary alarm systems are triggered, truth often gets trampled. Rumors spread and societies fracture. Sometimes it's small, like when everybody was panic buying toilet paper. Other times, catastrophic. It can be wars, persecution, even the collapse of democracies. And because alarm states make us more likely to follow than to question, manipulative voices gain enormous power. That's why mental defenses are critical, tools to keep the alarms from being hijacked. But biology also gives us the tools to fight back, each one designed to calm a different alarm. First, the pause. When alarms fire, the amygdala acts before the prefrontal cortex. 10 seconds of breathing lets your thinking brain catch up and keeps any alarm from hijacking you. Second, perspective broadening. The tribal alarm divides us and them. Imagining the other as human softens that artificial division and quiets the ancient alarm. Third, stories over statistics. For hundreds of thousands of years, stories were how humans recognized truth. They carried out meaning across campfires way before charts or data existed. That wiring still runs deep. A good story moves hearts faster than numbers ever could. That's why lies told as stories travel so far, and why truth, to survive, must learn to speak in story form once again. Fourth, fact anchors. Scarcity alarms scream, "There's not enough," or "Things are getting worse." Politicians may warn that crime is skyrocketing in a city, but fact anchors let you check. Is it really? Often, the data shows the opposite. Anchors are trusted facts and sources you return to when fear spreads. They steady the brain against exaggeration and keep perspective. And as truth hackers, We make sure those facts get shared. And fifth, build alternative tribes. Belonging to a tribe once meant life or death. By expanding who counts as us, you weaken those who profit from division and reduce their power to trigger both tribal and status alarms. These are not rhetorical tricks. They are neural defenses, proven tools that can be taught and practiced, and that's what Truth Hackers is here to do. For our ancestors, these alarms meant survival, but today, they're pulled by those who seek power, money, or control. Sometimes there is no fire. Sometimes the flames are distant or imagined, yet our brains react as if the danger was real. Our brains were built for survival, not truth. And that mismatch makes us vulnerable, but awareness changes everything. When you recognize the alarms, you shift from reacting to choosing, from being manipulated to defending reality itself. Because if you let other people pull your ancient alarms, then you're not living in truth. You're living in the reality that they created for you. Do you and your brain want to learn more? Then sign up for Truth Hackers and watch another video.